A lot of y'all don't realize that financial difficulties, hardships, and setbacks is a result of disobedience, delayed obedience, and spiritual warfare. So, in the Garden of Eden, God put Adam and Eve there, right? Just let me cook. Eden, the word for Eden means God's presence, okay? So when God put Adam there, he gave him a job. He gave him a purpose. He told him what to do. He told him who to become and what he was in charge of. So God made Adam a manager because everything came from God, right? So that means Adam was put here to manage what God gave him. So that means he was a manager. He was also a farmer, okay? So he was tilling the ground. He had a job. So God did not give him Eve until he had a job, he had a purpose, he was in God's presence, and he knew what his assignment was. Meaning he knew what he was capable of, and he knew what he was supposed to become. So if a man don't have those four things, he cannot please a woman. That's one, because he can't even please himself, because God made Adam to want and need all four things to be able to fully function. God's presence, an assignment, purpose, and resources to manage. All men want to manage or something. They all want to be bossy. All of them need to be in God's presence. All of them want to know what their purpose is. And all of them love to work. All men love to work. It's just wired in them. Now, then he gave him Eve, right? All right, watch this. Let me cook. Spiritual warfare is the reason why their blessings were removed. How do I know that? Because God gave them an assignment. He told them. He gave them a rule. He said, don't do this. When Eve and Adam did that, they were removed from God's presence, and now they were no longer blessed. He loved them, but they were not blessed anymore. So that tells me that the result of me being disobedient to God and not listening is due to spiritual warfare. So spiritual warfare comes from the lack of God's presence, the lack of purpose, the lack of doing what God told you to do, and the lack of resources that God gave you to manage. Therefore, spiritual warfare is a result of disobedience and not being in God's presence, not doing what he tells you to do, and it's a part of spiritual warfare. When you remove yourself from God's presence, you are under spiritual warfare all the time. All the time. Your life is full of trials and tribulations and calamities. Versus you being in God's presence, you're not going through trials and tribulations and obstacles. You have opportunities to grow. So it's a difference between you being in God's presence, and then there's a difference between you just being present. You present, you going through obstacles and a lot of stuff is just in the way, and trials and tribulations and calamities, and oh my gosh. When you're in God's presence, that's an opportunity to grow. So an obstacle becomes an opportunity when you're in God's presence. Amen. So he will bless you by going through and standing in that opportunity, because it's no longer an obstacle because you're in God's presence. You will be blessed for it. So that tells me that the lack of God, the lack of his presence, the lack of his instructions, the lack of his guidance, the lack of his resources is the reason why you are going through spiritual warfare. And if you're going through spiritual warfare, that means that you will not be blessed. So if you won't be blessed, you will financially lack. You're welcome.